Right now, somewhere out there, a deer is freezing in place because it heard you snap a twig. A crow on a wire is watching you from 50 feet away and deciding whether to bolt. A coyote that was in that field 10 seconds ago is already gone. You didn't threaten them. You didn't chase them. You just showed up. And that was enough. So what's actually going on? Why does your presence alone send animals scattering in every direction before you've done a single thing to deserve it? The short answer is that animals aren't scared of you specifically. They're scared of what humans have been doing to animals for somewhere around 2 million years. Fear like that doesn't just appear, it gets built in slowly, layer by layer, until it becomes part of the animal itself. What you're seeing when a deer freezes and runs isn't that deer making a judgment call. That deer is running on programming that predates the species. The fear is older than the individual animal by an enormous margin. Here's how deep this actually goes. Researchers tested wild animals in areas with zero history of human hunting, locations where humans had never hunted, never posed a threat, places so remote that the animals had no reason to associate people with danger. And those animals were still wary, not completely fearless, just noticeably less panicked than animals in hunted areas. That matters because it tells you this isn't purely learned behavior. Some of the wariness is baked in at a level that outlasts any individual animal's experience. Evolution doesn't move fast, but it moves relentlessly, and for most animals, encountering a human has been a reliably bad outcome for long enough that caution became the default setting. Think about what that actually required. A population of prey animals gets hunted by humans over thousands of generations. The bold ones, the ones that didn't spook easily, the ones that stuck around to investigate instead of running, those are the ones that got caught. They didn't pass their boldness down. The nervous ones ran first and survived. They had offspring. Those offspring inherited the tendency to run early. Over enough time, the calm, curious animals are gone from the gene pool, and you're left with a population wired to treat human presence as an immediate threat. That's not a theory. That's just how selection works, and humans gave it plenty of material to work with. The specificity of this process matters in ways that shaped entire behavioral lineages. When humans developed projectile weapons, they fundamentally altered the predator-prey dynamic in their favor. Unlike most carnivores that kill through close engagement, humans could eliminate prey from distances so far that the animal often couldn't even see what killed it. An animal bit by a lion might escape and learn from the encounter. An animal hit by an arrow never got that chance to update its behavior. This one-way lethality meant that every generation, the animals most likely to approach humans died without reproducing. The wariness that allowed animals to survive spread through populations not because individuals learned it, but because the individuals without it simply didn't make it to breeding age. Over thousands of generations, this pressure created populations where skepticism of humans became written into their neural circuitry as deeply as any instinct could be. Here's the part that surprises people. We aren't even the biggest or the fastest predator most of these animals deal with. Wolves are faster, bears are stronger, big cats are quieter and hit harder. But research on animals across multiple continents keeps showing the same thing. Humans produce a fear response in prey animals that is measurably more intense than the response triggered by lions, wolves, or any other predator sharing the same territory. Scientists call it the landscape of fear, and by that measure, humans sit at the very top of it. A recording of a human voice played near a watering hole caused animals to flee at more than twice the rate of lion calls played in the same spot. Mountain lions, not deer, not rabbits, mountain lions heard a human voice and left. That study came out of South Africa, and it upended a lot of assumptions about where we sit in the predator hierarchy. So why are we so much scarier than lions? Part of it is range. A lion or a wolf threatens you from close up. Humans threaten you from distances those animals can't even conceptualize. A bow, a spear, a rifle. The animal never sees it coming and has no way to understand what happened. When a predator can kill you from further than you can detect it, running when you sense it at all is the only rational strategy. Animals that waited to confirm whether a human was actually a threat didn't get second chances to update their behavior. The ones that ran on the first hint of human presence were the ones that lived. There's also the coordination problem. Most predators hunt alone or in small groups with a fairly predictable strategy you can eventually learn to read. Humans hunt in groups that communicate, plan ahead, use traps, use terrain in ways no other predator does. A single lion is dangerous. A single human is dangerous in ways that scale in unpredictable directions. Animals can't model that complexity, so the smart response is to treat any human as the tip of something much larger and get out before it materializes. That instinct has been correct often enough to stick. What's interesting is that this fear isn't uniform. It varies by species, by location, and by the specific history a population has with people. Animals in national parks where hunting is prohibited gradually become less reactive to humans over generations. Elephants in heavily poached areas are dramatically more aggressive and fearful than elephants in protected zones, even when the animals in the protected zone have never personally been hunted. That's not one elephant's experience. That's information moving through a population somehow, through behavior passed from mothers to calves, through social learning, through the observable fact that the nervous elephants are still alive and the calm ones aren't. Some animals have adapted so specifically to human activity that their fear is almost surgical. Crows can recognize individual human faces. They remember which specific person harassed them and pass that information to other crows. There are documented cases of crows holding grudges against particular people for years and recruiting other crows to mob that person on sight. That's not generalized fear. That's a targeted threat assessment based on specific remembered data, updated and shared socially. When researchers at the University of Washington wore particular masks while handling crows, the crows learned to mob the mask, not the person. They abstracted the threat down to a visual identifier and stored it. Crows scold humans wearing those masks to this day on that campus, years after the original study ended. Corvids aren't the only ones doing this. Octopuses in research facilities have been observed treating certain lab workers differently based on past interactions. Fish in heavily fished areas are warier, faster to flee, more reluctant to approach anything unfamiliar than fish in the same species in protected waters. The pattern shows up everywhere you look, across wildly different animal lineages with completely different nervous systems. Humans have been a consistent enough threat across enough of evolutionary time that caution toward us shows up independently in species that last shared a common ancestor hundreds of millions of years ago. Here's something worth sitting with. Most of what we consider normal animal behavior around humans, the flushing of birds, the bolting of deer, the silence that falls in a forest when you walk through it, is actually a disruption. It's a trauma response encoded over evolutionary time. Before humans became capable hunters, before we developed the tools and coordination that made us genuinely dangerous across continents, the natural state was probably something closer to the naivety you see on islands that were never settled, the Galápagos. Parts of Antarctica, places where humans arrived late or not at all. Animals there walk up to people. Birds land nearby. The caution isn't there because it was never selected for. That's what the baseline looks like. What you see everywhere else is what hundreds of thousands of years of being hunted does to a population. Domesticated animals complicate this picture in an interesting way. Dogs, cats, cattle, these are animals whose entire relationship with humans has been restructured over thousands of years of selective breeding. We kept the animals that tolerated us and bred from them. Over generations, you get animals that are genuinely comfortable with human presence, not just resigned to it. The silver fox experiment in Russia demonstrated this explicitly. Dmitry Belyev's team selectively bred wild foxes for tameness across 40 generations and ended up with animals that actively sought human contact, wagged their tails, and vocalized in ways wild foxes never do. The behavior changed remarkably fast once the selection pressure flipped, which tells you that underneath all that fear in wild animals is a nervous system capable of something completely different, if the history had gone another way. The domestication pathway also reveals how the fear gets dismantled. It's not that tame animals lack the threat detection hardware their wild relatives have. It's that repeated safe exposure rewrites the threat value associated with humans. A dog raised around people doesn't have a broken fear response. It has a fear response that has been calibrated over generations to not fire for humans. Young animals of many species show something called a sensitive period, a developmental window where experience shapes their social responses in ways that are very difficult to reverse later. Hand raise a wolf pup through that window and you get an animal comfortable with people. Leave it with its pack and you get a wolf that runs. The hardware is the same. What differs is what got written into it during the critical window. Wild animals don't get that window reset. What they get is the accumulated history of their species' interactions with ours, encoded into reflexes that fire before the animal has time to think. The rabbit that bolts when you step into the field isn't making a decision. It's executing a survival program that has been running for longer than the rabbit can conceptualize, tested relentlessly against the real consequences of being wrong, and refined until the threshold for triggering it sits as low as it can sit without causing the animal to flee from literally everything. That threshold is calibrated specifically around the particular danger profile humans represent: distant, coordinated, unpredictable, and historically very effective at killing things. There's a concept researchers use called the ghost of predation past. The idea is that prey animals maintain behavioral responses to predators even after those predators have been removed from an area, sometimes for decades. Pronghorn antelope in North America are one of the clearest examples. They're extraordinarily fast enough to outrun every predator currently alive in North America by a wide margin. Their speed makes no sense relative to present threats. But North America used to have cheetahs and other fast pursuit predators that went extinct around 10,000 years ago. The pronghorn's speed is still calibrated to a predator that no longer exists. The fear lingered in the population long after the thing that caused it was gone. For humans, the situation is reversed. We're still here. We're still hunting. The ghost isn't a ghost yet. The fear is current, constantly reinforced, and for most wild animals, entirely justified. So the ghost of our past is still running the wild. If you found this breakdown fascinating, let us know by hitting that like button and subscribing. It helps the channel grow more than you know. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, stay curious.